Good morning, listener, and welcome to another exciting edition of the Electoral Reform Hour on the network service of Radio Nigeria. We're delighted to have you with us today. On this edition of the program, we will be exploring the anatomy of fair election, examining the essential components that contribute to a transparent and credible electoral process. We'll discuss the importance of fair procedures, impartial oversight, and the role of all stakeholders in fostering an environment where every vote counts. Stay with us as we uncover how these elements work together to ensure elections reflect the will of the people. My name is Ezenwa Mwagu, your anchor. Electoral Reform Hour is a program aimed to foster inclusive dialogue among citizens from varied backgrounds concerning electoral reform and constitutional amendments. We also hope to enhance public understanding and awareness regarding electoral reforms and possibly compile and present citizen-derived recommendations to the National Assembly and INEC for consideration. This program is brought to you by Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa, PACA, with support from MacArthur Foundation. At the heart of any credible election is an impartial and independent electoral body that ensures the process is free from political interference. In Nigeria, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, plays this vital role, overseeing voter registration, campaign regulations, and the general conduct of elections. A fair election begins with an inclusive voter registration process that allows all eligible citizens to participate without barriers. Access to reliable information, a free press, voters to make fair decisions, the proper use of public resources of all political contenders are on a level. On election day, transparency and success must be clear and organized. Election officials must act ensuring the integrity of the vote count, while national and international observers provide oversight to guarantee the process is free from malpractices. Election in Nigeria reflects the will of the people and strengthen democracy. Our guest today is Hajiya Zakari, former acting national man of the Independent, former national, and I think commissioner in chief. Well, yeah, Hajiya Amina Zakari, appointed as one of the nationals, also chaired the council with until her appointment as acting of the INEC planning from November 2014. Amina Zakari was appointed in 2015 following the experience at Tahiru. Deep experience will shed valuable light on of fair elections that most people do. She's also a pharmacist, and that part is not always in the Hajiya.
Thank you, everyone.
Away from INEC, I know you've been around and all of that. What are you like?
Well, how the experience in INEC, election day is equally as important, and obviously people out to me on election day. It's like a feel of being in INEC around elections, and I monitor closely, and I'm a member of the election forum where we form together to discuss matters concerning elections, and we bring out we actually advocate for certain changes. We inform. We also request certain changes from INEC and play.
I was talking to the person said Hajiya Amina Zakari was one of the most experienced, indeed, most national, and I know that to be true. So this experience you came out from, what are the things, were key things for you? The things really you learned?
I learned was early planning plan in good time to carry on board. What we usually do, we used to have periodic elections, especially the elections. We, from the states to the headquarters, we begin planning with the operations officers, the political officers, the REC. They may come 3 times before for the off-season election. Also go to the states. We begin having stakeholder meetings, and then towards the election, there are more visits to the states to ensure all the processes that are dished out are actually being to the letter. The key learning points are early planning, and for that early procedure. No news to have failures, because you have to prepare. That is for both the politicians. There's a time to prepare credible elections. Monitoring election staff in the field, you have to keep monitoring, you have to keep asking questions. The processes, because sometimes they really don't understand what the headquarters is talking about. We're planets from a knowledge base, them quite. So you need to bring them on kind of teach training on your vision of whatever materials you see, like the disability diseases. We send them to go on election day, we had them because they don't understand what they needed to do. Size on all those processes being utilized appropriately.
I quite I also many activities. They have concluded that INEC were involved in, and all the 12 went smoothly. Yeah, but what are the fundamentals of, because we use these words, fair, credible. What are the real fundamentals? What constitutes free, using the benefits of the many years in which you have seen by elections, as it were?
Well, it's an election where everybody exercises franchise. Voters should come out and vote. A fair election is the one that INEC and the agencies and all those involved provide playing ground. There's no suppress. You people exercise their rights, and also the contestants should have reality. There should be transparency. Transparent, all your procedures, and open to all stakeholders. A fair election should be inclusive of all manners of people, youth, the aged, the disabled, female, and the general public. And politicians should also embody the culture of democracy, so a part of the solution to a free, fair, credible election. And it starts from their primaries. If their primaries are not fair, their primaries are not transparent, the tendency is they want to carry on those activities to the election. And I always say that INEC does not plan to rig an election. So what happens along the way? INEC's plans are being affecting factors on their control. There are those factors that are within the control of INEC, but majority of the factors are not within the control of INEC. So we need to have fairness in the system by the politicians themselves and by the leaders, and then we also need to educate the public on what their expectations are and how they should conduct the election, and then we should emphasize on their mandate protection. They should protect their mandate, because no matter how INEC plans, INEC doesn't have enough people to monitor the whole process. We have observers, but observers cannot, they just watch, and there's the monitors and the supporters that can affect the process. The public have a role, and they should protect their mandate, and INEC should give them that right to protect their mandate.
I see that. I was in the RAC centers in the INEC officials were there for as early as 7 a.m. That's the core members. Mm-hmm. But the security agents to escort them from the RAC were appearing at about 8:30, 9 a.m. And the buses taking them from the RAC were just 2. Mm-hmm. So I'm just appreciating your understanding of how other stakeholders also impact the work of INEC. But we talk about transparency a lot in elections, and you've been around. What do we mean by that when it has to do with elections? What is transparency? What does that? How does that impact anyone?
It's a very simple thing, because it's whatever INEC does, everybody should be informed in a timely manner and in a simple manner that they can understand. The stakeholder meetings that INEC holds continuously are part of the transparency process. And then that should be imbibed at the lower level too. The RECs, the EOs should have as much stakeholder meetings as possible. And there are times we've had to call stakeholder meetings in the middle of an election if things are not going the right way, because election is a project management issue. You can't plan something and expect it to work 100%. There must be deviations. That's why you always do your risk analysis and project management and your mitigation path, So sometimes we have to hold stakeholder meetings in the middle of an election to be able to carry people along, especially in those restive, violent areas. I remember in Rivers when we had issues with our ballot paper, result sheets that didn't have the original. It was always showing duplicate. What we did was call stakeholders that, okay, what's the mitigation path? And they agreed that the REC should sign off on all the result sheets. And when we have substitute result sheets too, we always have spare result sheets. So, and we ask the REC to sign them off before they get to the field, because they may have a different color from our original result sheet. So these are kind of mitigation factors, and these are the path to transparency, because you actually own up to your mistake. And I'm having issues. Please, stakeholders, what can we do
together?
Sometimes on the eve of election, we call all the parties at the state level and say, this is what's going on. And when we are going to distribute ballot papers, we ensured we had the party agents. So this is how transparency should be. But especially, transparency should be discussed around the processes of the election, and then the activities. And if you have problems, if you don't have ballot papers, enough ballot papers, you should discuss it openly and inform the public that this is my problem. But since my turnout is normally 30%, I have 80% of my ballot papers, so I'm going to go ahead and conduct my election.
Yeah, I bear witness to the fact that you've been very central in the elections that were conducted when you were around. But one sore point has been the neutrality of electoral officials. A lot of people still hang on, and I know you had your own back and forth on that issue at some point, where people were saying, you can't be said to be neutral because you are this, you are that, you are related to this, or you are all of that. How do you think electoral officials can remain neutral in the conduct of elections, and to be seen also that they are actually neutral?
Well, the first thing is to remove yourself from whatever politics. You understand? It's very easy to do if you have the mindset that I'm going to be neutral. You look at your work from the point of view that you're serving a nation. It's a national call. It's a national service. So you cannot afford to be partial. And to what end? And how much can you affect? How much can you influence a whole process? Like general election, there's over 150,000 polling units. How much impartial can you be? Yes, we have pockets of people that are trying not to be neutral. They were supposed to be signing oaths of neutrality before the election. Every INEC staff should sign that oath of neutrality. That is the main staff and the ad hoc staff. I don't know if it's still done. I know it used to be done. So there must be that oath of neutrality, even though for some people it's just a piece of paper. But for some people, when they're signing it, they understand their neutrality. But I tell you, majority of the INEC staff are neutral. It's just a few bad eggs and then the fact that the politicians keep trying to, encourage this bad behavior. They try to reach out, and then some staff capitalize on it and actually reach out to the politicians and cannot even affect the outcome because you're just one out of thousands of staff or millions. So actually, if we can all relax and allow things to go their way, there shouldn't be a problem with neutrality at all.
In your time, you were part of the JEGA period when university lecturers were brought into the play as returning officers and all of that. And then I think it was also in your time that the MOU with core members was signed. All of that you were doing to show up the integrity of the electoral process. But with time, with the benefit of insight, how these ad hoc staffs, how can INEC be made to hold them accountable? And then from what we also see, we've seen 2 professors at least arraigned in courts. We've seen all kinds of things. That has been a sore point. Do you still think that that's your intervention? Because I felt that it was simply an intervention it was not meant to be a bureaucracy that it has become. But I don't know what your view is. Do you still think, and how can we hold them accountable?
For me, it was a good intervention. It worked because there was still that monitoring and evaluation. There were sanctions and reward at the beginning. If there was any problem, coppers were actually taken to court at one time. There were sanctions, and if they did very well, there was a reward system. So it was working. With the lecturers, it was also working at the beginning, but somewhere along the line, the Nigerian factor has set in, unfortunately. And I don't know. You say it's a Nigerian factor, but it doesn't have to be that way. So I think INEC could have evolved from where we were. There should be some form of evolution and review of these processes and a deviation. You can deviate. You can actually include more people. We try to include more professionals like the pharmacists, architects. We use their professional bodies. That was for 2015. We went to Corin. We asked architects to give us names of credible people. We actually uploaded their names on the portal, but we didn't do the recruitment. We only harnessed the ad hoc staff, and the states were supposed to do the recruitment. And for collation officers, it was the sole responsibility of the chairman. But we could begin to include more credible people within those professions. We had like 6 professions that we worked with: accountants, pharmacists, engineers, architects, and other, and the lawyers too. But the lawyers were not to serve as colleagues. The NBA, they had their other roles that we were collaborating, because INEC is all about collaborations with other people. You can't do it alone. There's no way they can do it alone. I see now that they're beginning to include staff as the lower level collation, but it has not changed much. We still see overvoted results sneaking into the final results, which INEC staff should be firm about. When we began, our supervisors were firm about not allowing this kind of results to pass through. But somehow now things are beginning to turn, I don't know how to say it, the things are beginning to turn sour, because we see overvoted results sneaking into the final collation. Meanwhile, you have the beavers. You're supposed to open the beavers and see how much accreditation before you pass any poly unit result. That is the process. It's been like that since the smart card reader. Somehow now we still see some results sneaking in. So what went wrong? Is it the staff too have changed attitude? Certainly the lecturers or university staff. It's not all lecturers. There's a mix of university admin staff that have found their way as collation officers. And another thing we could done is, besides the sanctions and rewards, another thing INEC could do is to keep that database. We started having a database. Have a database of ad hoc staff you've used, and ensure those that you had problems in their poly units or collation centers, they should be blacklisted.
Now that you're talking about collation, we used to say, or we keep saying, it is the weakest link in the electoral process. But with the benefit of experience that I also have observing elections. Many times now, election is at the polling. Most of the election is at the polling unit. The party agents at the polling units collude, because it's also coming to you, reverse logistics that you're talking about. Go back to the beavers. Once the collusion of party agents happen at the polling unit, nobody is complaining because somebody has to complain. Once nobody is complaining, everybody signs off on what goes on at the polling unit. Are we talking to the politicians enough? Because when I listen to commentaries, we are all on INEC.
Yes.
What INEC? But I've observed elections enough to know that INEC sometimes are helpless in terms of. So what do you think? How do we this collation? What can we do better?
I know INEC has done its best. The country has, the laws allow for collation at the levels, and I always believe the collation at RA is the checkpoint for the polling unit shenanigans. What happens at polling units? Yes, we know there's community connivance, agent connivance. Agents are bought and they turn the other way. So for me, saying okay, transmit directly to headquarters is not the final answer. E-collation is not the final answer. We commenced e-collation, but we were using it. That was 2014 to 2016. We were using it as like a back end checks and balances. It wasn't in the law then. It can be done, but it's still risky to accept it as the final answer. So my take is, in my view, we should do away with all RA collation at RA. RA collation should happen at the local government. You put out 10 tables or as many number of RAs you have. The local government collation officer is sitting, waiting. The presiding officers come straight to the local government office in the open, maybe under canopies. Each one RA 1 to 10 collate right in front of the public, and they get up and hand over to the LGA collation officer. With cameras, we can have cameras in 774 local governments. Well, we're going
to go on a stretch of break. But before we do, I would just want you to look at the challenges of logistics. In your time, logistics was a perennial issue. Edo logistics also, polls didn't open in many places. 17% of poll officials were in the places where they should be by 7:30 a.m. Polls opened late. I know INEC mitigated that by extending the time. But what can we do? Because this, every election you are talking about logistics, you are talking about collation, you are talking about security. With the benefit of insight, what can we do to address that very quickly before we go on a short break?
Well, for me, I think we should accept the fact that we don't have the number of vehicles we claim to have, you understand, or we need for an election. So certainly we cannot have every polling unit commencing at 8 o'clock. We've tried having 80%, 90% on do, or some other elections. But there are terrains that you really cannot have up to 80% commencement. And now the numbers are going lower and lower. And then the fact that the policemen will not sleep with you in the rack, you have to wait for them in the morning. So we should now accept the fact that we cannot have those openings at 8 o'clock. 8:30. And so we should devise means of being able to identify those areas that are likely to commence late, and begin to, we have the polling unit. We have telephone numbers of people in the polling units. We have to deploy much technology and begin telling people your polling unit could not open at 8 because the staff have not arrived. So it will commence at 10, and then we give you the same number of hours as if you can come. Yeah, so it can be done if we deploy more technology and we are more attuned to supporting the voters.
Hajiya, hold your thoughts there. We'll be going on a short break. It's Electoral Reform Hour on Radio Nigeria. When we're back, we'll continue the conversation with Hajiya Amina Zakari, former National Commissioner,
Stay
Independent.
tuned to Electoral Reform Hour on the network service of Radio Nigeria. We'll be back shortly.
Are you ready for change? Join the Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa, PACA, for the Electoral Reform Hour. This program amplifies electoral reform campaigns and provides citizens with opportunity to make meaningful contributions that will strengthen our electoral process.
I think what we should do and what we've been advocating for is to find a way to harmonize all the biometrics we have been doing in the country so that we have one. If you have your NIMSI card, for instance, it should be able to carry all the data, social security, like it's done everywhere. So when you vote, everything about it is there.
My position is that the result, substantive, the election ends at the polling unit. Once the presiding officer, in the presence of polling agents, in the presence of security men, in the presence of all other stakeholders, including some of the people that voted, counted the scores of candidates and parties openly, entered the results into form EC8A and snapped it, that is the real result. And it is that goes into IREF.
Let's embark on the path to significant transformation and well-informed decision-making together. As the National Assembly, INEC and other stakeholders work towards improving our electoral process, you too can be part of the decision-making process by participating in the radio program.
You are on to Comrade Abdullah Mohammed. I'm calling for Bida Local Government Area Council of Niger State. I'm advocating to federal government or the member constitute to look into this electoral reform. That why should a member be in the house to speak the truth? At the end of the day, what we continue receiving or hearing is to suspend that member and to tell him to join any political party of his choice. Who then are we expecting to come and tell us the truth?
This is Brian Orator from Latte ID State. My idea is that INEC should stand firmly as an independent body. Secondly, the local government election should be conducted from the INEC, not from the national level.
Remember, democracy is for the people. Together, we can make a difference. Let your voice be heard in the Electoral Reform Hour, where every opinion matters. PACA, making democracy work for the people.
Thanks for staying tuned. We're back with your favorite program, Electoral Reform Hour, on the network service of Radio Nigeria.
It is still the Electoral Reform Hour, and you can be part of this live program by sharing your comments via the social media platforms on X at paca.ng with the hashtag Electoral Reform Hour, and you can leave your questions and comments for us on Facebook via at paca, and our WhatsApp number is 0816-8083-424. The phone lines will be open soon. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the Electoral Reform Hour on the network service of Radio Nigeria. We were having a very great and robust discussion with key elements of our fair elections with Hajiya Amina Zakari. We still have more to cover, so let's jump back into our conversation from where we left it. Hajiya, there are allegations of electoral misconduct. Allegations of electoral can erode public trust and increase voter apathy. That's common sense. So what strategies do you think INEC should adopt to restore faith in the electoral, to improve faith in the electoral process, and especially in the light of the issues seen, the small issues seen in the last Edo election?
Yeah, I think there should be that transparency in collation. Maybe we should introduce an audit of our collated results before we shouldn't be rushing to announce our results. Like a lot of countries we've visited, they'll wait for 2 weeks. They have to audit every result and make sure that every result that comes in conforms with the law.
In Nigeria, they will say you have tampered.
But we have to move away from this fast. We must look back and audit. We can't trust these collation officers anymore. We've used INEC staff. We still see some infractions. So we should begin to audit. We can get a team of... In South Africa, no result gets out until it's audited. And they still transmit online. And the results are announced as quickly as possible. So we should begin to audit our results. Somebody should look at those results, especially at the RA level, before they get out to the local government level. Because once they get to the state level, you see agents complaining, nothing can be done. And INEC cannot be the biggest fool on election day. You've conducted an election and then everything after the election is actually out of your control. Something needs to give.
Absolutely, I agree with you. We'll try. We'll see if we can. My producers, let me know if we can take calls, because there's a national program coming on. But let's see if we can hazard some calls before. It's possible you can join us, join this conversation by calling 09150910482, 09150910483. It's your program. We'll be happy to get you calling from wherever you are listening to us. 0915-0910-482, 0915-010-483. You can also leave your questions and comments for us on WhatsApp at 0816-8083-424 and on X at packer.ng and Facebook Packer. While we expect the calls to come, Hajiya, do you believe reforms are needed in the process of appointing INEC commissioners to enhance the commission's independence? What changes will you suggest?
Certainly. Either we advertise, but knowing that a lot of people will apply and the process will be quite cumbersome, I think whoever is the appointing authority should take as many CVs as possible and interview people before appointment. This is done in Kenya. Actually, right from the chairman to all the commissioners, it's an advertised post, and it's done transparently. We should be transparent, or radically, we should do away with recs and allow INEC to appoint those that let INEC be solely responsible for its actions. Let them appoint the state, the people, the admin sex or resident electoral commissioners. They don't have to be called electoral commissioners.
Yes, good morning. We can take your call.
My name is Abdullahi Mustafa Mohammed. I'm calling from Bida.
Abdullahi, can you make it quickly? Thank you so much for calling.
I most commend your guest on the platform. He has given a very commendable discussion, very interesting, very highly educating. But concerning electoral reform in Nigeria, I think we need to redefine the role of INEC, security agency, and the politicalization of our INEC officials. At this juncture, that is, they need to be neutral. The neutrality you display, you actually said about, should be backed up with societal purpose. Because the way INEC politicians influence the actions of INEC is unbecoming. So INEC need to be given a free and independent constitutionally. They should be operating under constitution, not under influence of any politician. And this, what I wanted to suggest actually is that INEC and prosecutor agents and all the stakeholders and actors should be under oath, strict oath, solemnly cause that if I did contrary to the wish and mind of people, God should do so to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I had an interesting contribution from Ahmed, but...
Hello,
good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Can we meet you quickly, please?
Okay, this is Abubakar Musa calling from Bida, Niger State.
Abu Musa. Can you make
good morning, Hajiya. Good morning, Hajiya. Thank you for your wonderful discussion this morning. We are highly enlightened based on the way the elections are unfolding in the country. Hajiya, if we look at the Nigerian society today, all our hope for good governance based on elections. But it's very unfortunate that the election is not giving us good governance. What can we do? You have said a lot to ensure that we have free and fair election in this country. But one thing bothers mean most Nigerians is the appointment of regs and the chairman independent National Electoral Commission. And I think it should be done. What is your perspective on this appointment of a chairman, independent National Electoral Commission and resident electoral commissioner? Because politicians are bringing in people who are partisans into the system, and this give us elections that are marred with irregularities. So I think I want to hear your opinion on the appointment of a National Electoral Commissioner and the rest, so that we can have people who are not partisans into the system. Because the Nigerian society, our public sector is still suffering as a result of bad elections. The election, credibility of election will ensure good governance. Will give us sustainable economic growth and development. Thank you very much for a wonderful discussion, Hajiya.
Thank you very much. We were just on the issue about the appointment of regs.
But I want to add, you were appointed, and I know I attest to the fact that you had a stellar performance. So, what was wrong with the process that brought you in?
The process that brought me in, I think at that time, if I heard correctly, was that President Jonathan said he wanted people with minded, people that had a mind of their own, people that were principled, people that had honesty and integrity. And a lot of people just threw in names. And that's how that JGA team came about. People had to prove that they had credibility. And a lot of us that came wanted to actually portray what we were told, how we came on board. And Chairman JGA had a knowledge of the Uwais report, and he came and hit the ground running. And we had hot-headed people.
The Mahmoud team, first team had over 10 folks from civil society. Also appointed, nominated by a different president from the one that appointed you.
Yes, but somewhere along the line, I think and then at that time, the civil society was actually keenly watching, and complaints were made. I remember one of my colleagues, one of those nominated, dropped out because he was purely a party man. He had been a chairman. So eventually, the civil society turned the other eye when these appointments are made, or even when they made noise, people didn't care. The National Assembly was not caring enough.
We were in court. Until now, we were sued by one of the people who you didn't want to come on board. So the presidency became a bit more brazen by bringing partisan people, and then it was like there was nothing anybody could do. So for me, I suggest we should have these interviews, open interviews of people that should be appointed. Look at America. Kamala Harris interviewed people to choose a VP. So why can't we interview people to choose those that should work for us, so that we can ensure that they are not partisan? I like the parts you talked about. Also, INEC being directly in control of the
yes. So
because of what was the challenge in terms of engagement? You are the National Commissioner in charge of operations, but you don't have control. The reg does not owe you anything because you are not the one that
appointed him. So INEC should either we do these interviews, or INEC should be solely in charge of appointing those that should work at the state level. This era of political patronage should be over. I think regs came about as a way of political patronage originally, then it changed, and now it's sliding slowly back to that, and INEC cannot control them, because they still align with their state governors, because maybe they are from the same party. We are seeing more and more of these things, even INEC regs opting to become governors. You understand? It's quite amazing. But at the same time, even if you're political, if you have that mindset, you swear to the oath of neutrality and you still want to be neutral, you can be neutral. I always tell politicians around elections that your name, I see you just like a name on a piece of paper during nominations. You only become human after election.
But in time past also, we've seen former governor of Bauchi State, MT Abubakar, also was sometime also a national commissioner, and I think that was before you. So aspirations For me, the key point that is important is what you have said. We have to interview, and we have to also quickly ensure that INEC has control of its resident electoral commissioners. We're going to be winding up in a short while. There are reforms at the National Assembly. People, and this is where I want you to really, because of the value of experience that you have, people are asking us to organize all elections in one day.
I can never agree with that until we have a change of attitude, and we actually imagine collating 5 different results. What happened in Edo is just a one-off election, is just the governorship. If you have 5 sets of collations, that means you have RA collation 8,000 times 5, or at least 8,000 times 3, because you can't allow one person to collate 5, and then the result will be delayed. That's why we now have people, the RA collation for presidency separately from the collation for House and Senate separately. So I think it will be a logistic nightmare if we have to conduct 5 elections in one day. It could be done when we have a change of attitude. We are more knowledgeable, the public is more knowledgeable, the politicians are less desperate to become whatever they want to become. You can do that and have seamless collation, because the collation is the crux of the matter. The election could happen, 5 ballot papers, no problem, but counting may well go through the night, and that's dangerous. So I think Nigerians should still allow these multiple elections, staggered elections to take place. That's better for the polity.
Diaspora.
Yeah.
There are calls for diaspora voting. There's calls for early voting for observers, media. There is call for people in correctional centers to be brought into the voting net.
Yeah, it's all about inclusivity, but we have to be really firm and serious about delivering this, and then we have to ensure that everything is foolproof, because the politicians will still may go to the prison and inflate the prisoners towards, anything can happen in Nigeria. So I think we should get there. We'll get there someday, but we have to get it right. We have to get this one-off elections right, get the general elections right. Then we begin to, we have a document on diaspora voting. Our biggest problem was data generation and how to get them to be registered and whatever. But it can be done. Smaller countries are doing it. It's just that attitudinal change from Nigerians. Once we change our attitude towards election and see them as civil process, not a war, because actually deployment in election is larger than some war deployment in Nigeria, because you deploy everybody and everything. Yet at the end of the day, you still have cause to complain. When we don't have cause to complain, then we begin to look at all these other inclusivity issues. Diaspora voting, prison voting can be done. It's easy. We had commenced processing it before I left. The same with the diaspora voting, but we still have a long way to go. Unless we tidy up our logistics, our attitude, our ad hoc staff matters. Maybe we need to have that database so that we can have experienced ad hoc staff, people that have conducted elections over and over again, like the Ghana. There are many examples. You've gone around. There are many examples we can borrow from.
The National Commissioner Haruna was here. Festus Okoye has been there. And there's a strain of thoughts that almost all of you have. Attitudinal change. And they kept hammering on that. There must be something you people know that we don't know. But what will be the advice that you give to younger generation of electoral officers and policymakers who manage elections, who think through elections? It's not all the time that I can have an Hajiya Amina Zakari come on my platform. Let's see what do you think we can do to help this younger generation? What are those values that you hold very dear that made even people who don't like you accept that you are a hard worker and that you impacted the process very strongly?
Fairness, you have to be fair. to start with. You have to be fair to all, internally and externally. You have to be fair to staff. You have to identify the good hands and work with them. You have to be a good manager. Then you work with the good hands, and then you have to be a mentor and a teacher. You have to inculcate values. I know I've inculcated values in a lot of people, in terms of do the job first and wait for whatever will come later.
Well, how did you waive all those allegations of bribery, that they have given you dollars, that you are related to this, and how did you feel? Because sometimes also, because I know I'm close to you a bit during that period, and I knew the attacks that came and how some of us went out to say, no, we know this person, these things are not true. Isn't it what other sometimes INEC officials face?
Who face that? It's just that the guilty are not afraid. The guilty are afraid. If you are not guilty, you're not afraid. I knew I wasn't doing all those things. I was just focused on my job, and I planned to remain focused so that I could deliver. The end result is more important to me, and so whatever the process was in between, I was focused on the end result. And I believe that fairness, coming with a point, and from the point of view that you would be fair to all, that's all that matters, irrespective of party affiliation. If you ask a lot of questions, you'll find we've helped a lot of people that were being cheated. You have to help and you have to be fair. But the best thing for people coming later now behind us is that you should ensure a knowledge-based election. You have to be knowledgeable, you have to learn, you have to understand what you're doing, and you must use the knowledge. We should increase the use of technology, improve it. Technology is good, but sometimes it can be garbage in, garbage out. So you must improve the use of technology. That neutrality, honesty, transparency, and then continuously train those behind you. Don't hoard information. What they do is they like to carry the files by themselves. Ensure people below you. We made sure meetings were held with assistant directors because we needed continuity. The directors used to come alone to our meetings, the committee meetings. We said no, the deputy directors must come, assistant directors must come, and then the interconnectivity between departments so that everybody is informed. There's that transparency in the organization, and it's still working because we allow other departments to come into meetings for other departments so that they know that ahead of time this department is trying to have this policy and we can all work together. So, and then for the Nigerian public, I think policymakers, we need to support INEC. We need professionalism. We need to improve our recruitment processes. We need to professionalize our election management officers. They need more training in terms of elections, because in INEC there are more generalist people.
I think that they are fatigued. There is a training fatigue because the training every INEC training and
no, that's training of the outside.
Okay,
but training within, okay. You have to train them on their new policies and things like that, on the technology. There's a lot of people that are not technologically savvy. And then for the public, we need patience, we need support, a change of attitude, and then because we need to choose good, credible leaders. Like this the caller said, it's only when you have good governance you have development. We need to choose the right leaders. So basically Nigeria has a lot of work to do in terms of democracy. We're still not there, but we've done a lot between 1999 and
can't a bad process produce a good outcome, or can't a good process produce a bad outcome if it is democracy? I'm just because sometimes people good governance has more to do with what different groups do after election. I think we see election more as an event.
Yes, than a process.
No, as the event rather than a process, because the event should be good governance. And we're absent from that. Though everybody was there shouting, but once somebody is elected, everybody goes back to their business.
Yeah, but if it's fair, you understand, if it's fair and people decide to choose the wrong person, it is their choice. and they have to deal with it. But the good thing is they have 4 years to kick him out or retain him. So allow the process to be free and fair. Allow the elections to be conducted in a good atmosphere, because sometimes it's the interference that cause the elections to fall by the wayside, you know. So it's an event, yes, but it has to be a good event to be able to allow people to choose who they want. If they chose the wrong person, honestly, INEC has no problem.
And that's
you shouldn't have a problem. It's their choice.
That's what I tell people, that most times, having had the benefit of observing elections, I think that INEC has done credibly well in pushing power back to the people. And what they do with it is their own problem.
Exactly.
Vote buying was as a result of the initiatives that you people brought that locked INEC away from politicians. They now took the battle to
the people.
Yes.
And they decided to use money. So if the people want to keep taking the money to vote, sometimes they take the money and vote their choice.
Yes.
Sometimes they take the money and influence. But it's the polity also needs to be educated. We need a lot more civic education in this country.
I'm personally excited to have Hajiya Amina Zakari join today's electoral reform hour on Radio Nigeria. Very, very, very special thanks to you, Hajiya, for coming today. To our dear listener, thank you for joining us on the edition of the Electoral Reform Hour, brought to you by Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa, PACA, with support from MacArthur Foundation. Our engineers today on duty, Onyebuchi Adefemi Muko, and the ICT personnel is Ezei Former, and studio manager is Finehas Udueyo. Producers are Andohemba Ohen and Joy Ubi. Supervisor Husseina Akila MNI. My facilitating team, ever dependable, Abu Grace and Jeremiah Mpume. I want to thank you especially for joining us. Let's do this again next Thursday. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.